Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group Biweekly Sync. It is November 22nd, Thanksgiving here in the States, and it's a normal day not in the States. So welcome, everybody, and glad you all can make it. So we've got, turkey attack. Gobble, 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 gobble. I was going to do sound effects, but I thought that might be too much. As we get started on the call, we always like to discuss what the call is about for folks that might be new to the call or new to the recordings. This is part of the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program, where we have broken out these special interest group calls so that we can have a little bit deeper focus on some certain topic areas. This one is focused around client-side development things, which we'll go down that list here in a second, and then we have a second call on the other week. So this call is every other week, and we have another call on the weeks that this call doesn't fall on. Hopefully that makes sense, where we, in that one, dive into a little bit of PowerShell and CSOM development and managed code development. So different, more of the, I hesitate to call it classic SharePoint development, but not client-side development on the other call. So this call is really focused around updates on SharePoint Framework and associated development patterns, the PnP JS libraries, Office 365 CLI, the SPFx reusable controls, as well as the SPFx Yeoman generator, which might still be new to some of the folks on the call. And I would encourage you to check out, if you haven't, our last call from November 8th, where Stefan, who started the Yeoman Generator project, actually did a great demo and explanation here on this call. So go back and check that out. Really cool thing. And what that is an extension of the SharePoint Framework Yeoman Generator. So you're getting all the same back-end stuff, all the same SharePoint Framework functionality, but you have a few more choices now when you're setting up your project. Things like using Angular elements, adding the PnP JS libraries in by default, things like that. So very cool tool, really nice extension of what SharePoint Framework gives you out of the box. So do check that out if you haven't. It's a great new addition to our suite of patterns and practices, client-side related stuff, if you will. So two links down there at the bottom. SPPnP-community will take you to the Microsoft Tech community, specifically the SharePoint section of the tech community there. That's a great place to ask general questions around SharePoint development, whether it's client-side or not. Fantastic place for things like how would you architect, how would you design, I can't get this to work, what feature would you use to do this or that? Questions that really don't pertain to any specific library or aren't really a bug in anything, or more just kind of a question on how to do something. Tech community is a great place for those kind of questions. And then the second link there, aka MSSPDev-docs, will take you to the SharePoint developer documentation. So that will include the documentation for SharePoint Framework. So if you're new to SharePoint Framework, that'll give you all of the getting started guides, the nice little tutorials to walk through. I know that's how I got started, and that's where I still go when I have to do a web part or something and forget exactly a step in the process. Definitely check those out. But as well, the documentation is there for managed code solutions, CSOM solutions, all of that sort of stuff will be there. All our developer documentation is all moving to that location. If you see gaps, please let us know. Please report those. We will do our best. Unfortunately, right this second, documentation is losing out to some other priorities, as it often does, but still let us know if you see a gap, and that puts it on the backlog and make sure we won't forget. It's been reported. We'll check that out, but do give us a bit of time on that as we are working, as we've talked about before, on our plan to catch up on sort of the overall SharePoint Framework issues list. So let's get started with the call. And no, I didn't have the turkeys come out on every slide. I thought that would be a little much. But now that I think about it, I should have done that. So our agenda for today, engineering update on SharePoint Framework. update for the patterns and practices components, so PnPjs, the CLI, reusable controls, and the Yeoman generator. And then 2 great demos, the first from Kemal, and then the second from Anoop. The first there with PnPjs site designs and site scripts. And then the second one is about converting PDFs within the SharePoint Framework. So a tactic, a capability, a technique. That's the word I'm looking for, a technique to make that work. So definitely check that out. And then should have a little bit of time here for Q&A at the end. So moving right along, before we get started, do always like to discuss for folks looking to get more involved with the patterns and practices stuff. The first 2 boxes there, demo a SharePoint Framework solution, demo any of the @PnP stuff. So that could be the CLI, the PnPjs, the Yeoman generator, the reusable controls, any of that stuff. Would love to see demos inside or outside of SharePoint Framework. Really, as I've said, and y'all are probably tired of hearing me say it, but I think the demos are really one of the more valuable parts of these calls, because I know I always learn something new, and we get a chance to see great new stuff that all of you out there in the community is working on. But as well, for those of you out in the community, it gets you a little bit of visibility into some of the cool work that you're doing, which I think is always rewarding. At least it is for me when I get to kind of show off some of the stuff I've done, because I know often we sort of work in our little bubbles, and we're doing our things, and we don't really get to show off the cool stuff we're doing to folks that might appreciate it as much as we do. So these calls, great opportunity to do that. If you'd like to demo, please reach out to myself or Vesa. Reaching out on Twitter is a great way to get in touch with us. Do reach out to us. We'd love to get you signed up to demo on a call. Just a note, we might not be able to get you on, for example, immediately the next call on the schedule, but we will get you scheduled. Please do reach out. Love, love, love to see the demos from everybody, and really appreciate everybody taking the time to put those together and present. The other 2 boxes there, so you can always contribute on GitHub across all of our projects. So any of the stuff, we appreciate your issues you might report. We don't appreciate having issues, but we appreciate you telling us about them so we can get them fixed. And then as well, we always love to have those pull requests from the community. We're starting to see a whole lot more activity. The last, I'd say, 2 months has been really fantastic. We're seeing a bunch of new folks show up and contribute to the various things, so across the suite of components. So love to see that. Really appreciate those contributions, and thank you to everybody that has contributed to all of the work we're doing. It really benefits all of us in the community and helps us in our SharePoint development journey. And then finally, you can always provide feedback. So feedback, not necessarily an issue, but feedback just general, how things are going. What do you think about these calls? What do you think about the samples, the demos, those sorts of things? What kind of things would you like to see more of or less of? Really always appreciate that feedback. That feedback really drives what we do. And again, I do like to say, if you don't see immediate change when you give us a piece of feedback, it's not that we've ignored it, it's that sometimes change takes a little bit of time. So trust that we've gotten your feedback, received it, we've discussed it as a team, and we'll definitely work to change things as much as we can. One example of that is we've been asking folks if we're having too many calls. We had a survey about that. I'm not sure if the survey is mentioned in this deck, but we talked about it on the monthly call. We've already got a bunch of great responses on that, so feedback there. We've read through that. We'll continue to read through that and process that. But the general consensus seems to be around, no, we do not have too many calls. So great, but really appreciate that. And that feedback really helps us drive the value of what we do in PnP for all of you out there in the community. And so with that, I will hand things over to, oh, nope, one more slide. So this is what I was just talking about. I jumped the gun. Are we having too many calls? So we have had this discussion starting last week, this idea of are we having too many calls? We've got the biweekly calls and we have a monthly call, as well then as a lot of the videos and other recordings we put out directly to YouTube. So are we doing too many things? Are we having too many calls? Would really appreciate, folks, if you have the time, give us some feedback there on spdev-call-feedback, aka MS spdev-call-feedback. Love to hear from folks, and again, really appreciate everybody who's already giving us some feedback. So very much appreciate that. And if you have a moment and have some thoughts, it's a real short survey, but it's a chance for you to let us know what you think about the calls we are doing. So moving along, I'll hand things off to Vesa now for the SharePoint Framework update.
Thank you. And on the call survey, we will be running that probably for a few weeks. Right now, it seems to be that everybody is saying that we should not change anything, that things are looking insanely good. But there is a free-form text input box there as well. So feel free to give us any other feedback related on the PnP or something is missing or quality or whatever should be done. So let us know so that we will able to address any concerns might have. Now, thank you, Rob, for your input on that one. So on the SharePoint Framework, a small update on the engineering side before we go back on the open source projects and then the live demos from Anoop and Kemal. We did a tech check earlier. Patrick already explained what is the docs environment, so I'm not going to repeat that one here. Or the issues environment. We just Tuesday we went half of our pending issues through, and we will continue triaging these more often in the future. To be honest, next week a lot of the engineering teams will be in the European SharePoint conference in Copenhagen. So that means that next week we will not catch at least pending issues. But if there's any critical things, we have a support engineers looking into those, and they will be engineering as needed. So all good. Now quickly update on this. I didn't actually update the percentages in the lower section, but just been pointing the fact that the growth seems to be continuing being insanely good. So we still do not have any predictions even where we will be within a half a year, because we can't predict the growth on the third party or a custom SPFx usage in the cloud. That's because the adoption is growing so fast that it's unheard of. And this is by far the fastest adapted customization model in Office 365. We're seeing a lot of interest on all of the different services. So Microsoft Teams people were super excited on getting SharePoint Framework as the platform for Microsoft Teams tabs, and other services are looking into doing the same, because clearly community is embracing SharePoint Framework and really wants to use that industry standard way of customizing SharePoint, and so it makes perfect sense. So if you're still wondering on, hey, should I do SharePoint add-ins or should I do farm solutions or sandbox solutions, don't do that. Concentrate on SharePoint Framework. That is where the future of SharePoint is, absolutely. And SharePoint Framework web parts work in both classic pages and publishing pages, as an example, and also in the modern experiences. So even though you would be in a classic publishing site, you can still use a SharePoint Framework. Good thing to remember. Now, a few things what has happened since our last call related on SharePoint Framework. So first of all, it was like 2 hours after our previous bi-weekly SharePoint Framework call, we actually released SharePoint Framework 1.7. So now it's 2 weeks away from that release moment. Basically, the main things here are the general availability for, thank you for need more silver line, general availability for dynamic data, which is basically sharing data between the components, and also SharePoint 2019 support in a Yeoman generator. And then a lot of preview capabilities. So preview basically means that they do work in a targeted release tenants, but they do not, we do not support them yet in the production, because it might be that we're changing the functionality still based on your input. And obviously everybody is asking then, okay, so when will the Teams tab be GA'd, and when will the domain isolated web parts be GA'd? And technically, to be honest, we don't know. Why don't we know? Well, because it's dependent on what kind of feedback you're telling us based on the issue list which is in the SP dev doc. So if you find these things useful and awesome, and there's no issues, everything just magically worked with the first one, they will actually go much faster GA than if we're running into issues or we find technical challenges behind the scenes that impacts the timing. But that's how the agile service development works. We have no clue when these things would be GA'd, but clearly it doesn't happen by end of this year, because now we're already at the holiday season, and then when we come back from the holiday season, we are collecting the feedback and start modifying based on the feedback, and then we'll finalize them to be GA'd at some point. So that gives you some sort of a hint potentially where we will land on those on GA. Now, anyway, related on that one, so just making sure that everybody is aware of all of these assets and resources which we have released. We released quite a few documents related on the new capabilities. There is, for example, a really nice detailed step-by-step guidance on how to build Microsoft Teams tabs with SharePoint Framework, the SharePoint Framework's Yeoman generator. And this is in both written and also in video format, and basically you'll get a simplified web part which is aware, is it actually a web part or is it Microsoft Teams tab. In my personal, let's say, how do we position this, is that you use the SharePoint framework to build one solution, and then you surface the same solution in both Microsoft Teams and also as a SharePoint framework web part. Kind of related on this one, just letting you know as well. So we just released this one. Was it actually earlier today, or did I push it out yesterday? I can't remember, time flies so fast. But the leads LOB sample, which we actually, this is the original sample which we first demonstrated in SPC 2018 North America in May. In the for first time showing that, hey, you could actually surface your same LOB line of business application either in SharePoint or in the Microsoft Teams. This solution has been provided to you as a sample now, so source code and everything else is available for you in the SP Dev Solution repository. So if you go there and the master branch for solutions folder contains leads LOB solution folder, you pull that one down, you run npm install, and then you can actually test and see how the things are working properly in your environment. Obviously, the reason why we want you to get access on this one is that potentially you might want to use this as a demo if you're an MVP or a presenter in conferences and so on, so you can easily get access on the same demos as what we've been using. We will be, as an example, using this one as one of the demos for SPC. But why not actually give you access on these things as well? So cool, that's now available for everybody as well. Now, and it's pretty polished. So one note maybe on this one, so it is missing the details how to set up the Azure function for now, because I run out of time on writing all of those technical details. So, but there is a demo mode in the sweat part, and by default it is in the demo mode where it's not actually executing the Azure functionality. It is just generating the demo data inside of it. So it's basically hard-coded inside of the web part, but it demonstrates the story. So you can actually use this one really easily for your demos as well. Now, a few things related on the roadmap. So the 1.7, like mentioned, came out on 8th of November, so 2 weeks ago. We're not going to release, we're not going to do another release or a larger release by end of this year unless there's a critical findings on SPFx. So there might be 1.71. There's certain findings which we've been running into, nothing critical though, but we're still debating, will the 1.71 happen, or will we actually push 1.8 as the next one? The 1.8 will be coming out then I would say next quarter, next year. So I would say potentially late first quarter next year from a timing perspective. And then at that point, some of the capabilities might be available in GA. Some might be delayed until the next release. We'll see where we are at that point. But really the priorities and big themes for SharePoint Dev Platform right now from this moment forward is getting obviously the dev preview capabilities out. And then as an organization, we're prioritizing API and performance optimization. And this is a big theme for us as well, because the service, the usage is growing so fast, and there has been some performance challenges here and there. So we're really concentrating on that one, so that is getting more resources right now. Continuous feature adjustments in the UI elements and an API surface. We are also looking into getting the SharePoint Framework solutions to the SharePoint store. This is an ongoing discussion and ongoing journey. There was an assumption that it could have been actually slightly more easier than the last finding, so that's slightly delaying that, but we were still looking into making that scenario happen. It will not have a licensing story, but we will give you a capability of pushing your SharePoint Framework solution to the SharePoint store one way or another. And then it's up to you how do you implement the licensing for those web parts. And we'll give you guidance on that, but we're not going to actually take any cuts on those solutions. That's pretty much the direction where we're heading. And to be fair, subject to change, so there might be some last-minute changes on that. And then we're exploring options on using SharePoint Framework with other services, and that would already mean that it will no longer be SharePoint Framework. It will be renamed to be, let's say, Office 365 Framework or Microsoft 365 Framework. Now, good. So that's it from the SharePoint Framework side. So I'll let Patrick to continue from here. And I'm going to answer some of the questions in the window.
Great. Thanks, Vesa. So quick updates across the PnP libraries. So for the PnPjs client-side components, we did just release on November 16th 1.2.6. And the reason for that kind of surprise release was some folks are working on some stuff for the European SharePoint Conference and needed a couple of things added, so it seemed like a good opportunity to slip out a release for folks and get some of the great stuff. And again, most of this came from folks in the community, which is fantastic, so thank you to everybody there. So some new stuff in the term store, getting terms by ID. Item now has a parent list property. You can now easily set item metadata fields and multi-fields. There's a couple of helper methods for that. You can set the view XML, some search improvements, the ability to create modern communication sites, added some update and delete methods to user. That was actually in the graph library. Added some documentation, and then this is something we've gotten feedback on in the past, so try to give some better error messaging around HTTP errors that are coming out of the PnPjs request pipeline. So that should now have much more detail in the actual error response you get back in the message of that error object itself. So great stuff. Thank you to everybody in the community. Again, most of these updates were from folks in the community, so really appreciate that. Appreciate everybody's hard work there. 2 links down there at the bottom. Or 1 link down there at the bottom, excuse me. The PnP GitHub IO PnPjs takes you to the PnPjs library documentation, and that's a great place to get started. Please let us know. I know there's gaps there. Please let us know if you see a gap or some missing documentation. We'll do our best to get that updated. We, of course, also accept pull requests for documentation. So if you have a few moments and want to update some docs, always appreciate that as well. PnPjs, hashtag there on Twitter. You can follow me at Mediocre Bowler on Twitter. I pretty much just post updates around PnPjs. And so, not a lot of spam if you want to follow me on that stuff. So again, thanks to everybody in the community contributing to PnPjs. It's really phenomenal how fast we can grow, not just PnPjs, but all these other components with everybody from the community helping us out. So Office 365 CLI, new version 1.9.0 is out, so upgrading solutions from 1.6 to 1.7, so really great capability of the CLI. If you haven't used that, gives you the ability to upgrade solutions from older versions to latest versions using the CLI, so it takes a lot of the manual work out of that. And so now you can go from 1.6 to 1.7, so which is really fantastic. And then in progress, so that's going to be for version 1.10, managing webhooks, list content types, uploading files, cross-platforms, PnP starter kit setup script, and then more commands, of course, always looking for your feedback and comments on what can help there. Or, as always, you can contribute to the CLI. CLI is actually a great place to get started if you haven't contributed before, because each command is really atomic, so you can work just sort of on that command without having to sort of go across the entire library and check things out. So a really great way to get involved, and we've seen a lot of great contributions from the community in the CLI as well. Always, you can install the latest versions using the install. You install that globally with the -G flag, and then hashtag Office 365 CLI on Twitter. There's a Gitter channel there, and then there are docs as well on the aka MS 0365 CLI. So really check that out if you haven't used that and are unable to use the PowerShell. It gives you a great option for cross-platform using the command line to manipulate your SharePoint farm and take care of a lot of common asks. So on the reusable controls, so these are SPFx reusable controls based on React. So if you haven't checked these out, please do. There's two sets of controls. The first controls are property controls. Those are currently at version 1.12. Those are for the property pane. So when your web part goes into edit mode, you've got that property pane, and those property controls are a bunch of very helpful picker controls. So user pickers, list pickers, color pickers, taxonomy pickers. There's a bunch of them. And then the React content controls are at version 1.10, and those are more for the body of your web part or as well your application customizer. But those really help you quickly write your web parts without having to create a lot of these controls yourself, save you a lot of time, and then as well they're also styled with the Office UI fabric so that you are you're able to blend in and have that nice out-of-the-box look with your web parts. So really fantastic controls here. Elio's been doing a lot of that work, again, with a lot of great contributions from the community. So love to see that. And if you could save some time, it's always worthwhile to check those out and save some time. The most used controls are the placeholder control, the web part title control, the people picker control. And then as well, we've got some new stuff in there, the list item picker, the property pane, property editor control, and the property pane web part information control are some recent additions or updates in the library. Two links down at the bottom to the documentation for the React controls and the property controls, so you can check those out. And then, like I said, if you haven't used the controls, really great way to jumpstart your SharePoint framework development and get a lot of fantastic functionality right out of the box. And then the Community Yeoman generator. So looking at the SPFx generator, again, this is something I've talked about a couple times on the call. Check this out. If you haven't, new version 1.5 is out. It's upgraded the SharePoint to 1.7, so you're actually creating a SharePoint 1.7 project, update test definitions, updated the on-premises support for 2019, as well as some additional tests, and then so domain isolated option added, that's out of the 1.7 capabilities, and then package update checker has been added as well. So installing the latest version from NPM, you can always do that. Again, this is a global install using the -G flag. You can get more information down there at the link, generator-SPFx. And if you haven't checked this out, please do. And of course, this is also accepting contributions. So if you want to do a pull request or have issues, of course, please do report those. So great work to everybody. Stefan is leading the effort there, and again, with lots of great contributions from folks out there in the community. So thank you to all of you and to everybody for helping out across all of those libraries. And so now we are all set to get to the demos. So Kemal, if you are ready.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm ready.
Great.
For me,
if you
all
want
right,
to take over and share your screen.
Yes. All right. Let me know when you see my screen.
Loading on my side here. I still got loading on my side. Give it 1 second. I think I'm having a slow internet day.
I got it.
Are seeing it, yeah. I'll just wait, maybe. Or I can already do my introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Kemal, and I'm a SharePoint/Office 365 consultant, technical consultant from Belgium, and I work for Ventigrate. I've been using the PnP libraries since I started working, which was around 2015, and specifically the PnP Core back then, which was very useful for provisioning stuff. The templating engine is awesome. So this is also why I've had some interests with the site scripts and site designs, which are basically a new way to provision your assets on modern sites. I assume everyone is familiar with them, but I'll just explain the basics. Your site designs and you have site scripts. Some people confuse the two, but basically it's very simple. Your site designs, you can basically see them as your template, and the site scripts is basically your JSON schema, which holds your provisioning data. You can think of it if you think about PnP Core, the templating there, that would be your XML file. So yeah. So I'll start off with showing a Node.js application in debug mode, which is implemented in the PnPjs library. So the first thing we'll do, which I've already done, is create an empty theme site. We'll use this theme site later to provision our site design to it. So if I hit F5, I have some code at the start which will basically delete all my site designs and all my site scripts. So you should not do this. It's just for my own debug environment. Let that run for a second, and then we'll come to the first step, which will create our site script to start off with. So obviously we need a site script which we'll later add to a site design, which is a schema we can generate, which is out of the scope for this discussion. There are tools, and I'll show you later how you can use these tools to easily create such a schema. So basically what we're doing here is creating a JS list and basic template type. So if we continue, we'll let this run. So our first code will create a site script with our title, just some description, and of course our schema, which is called content in the backend. So if we let this provision, let that run, and when we check out this object, what it contains, we'll see it has an ID, and our title is in here, so that's a good thing. Let's continue. The next step is we will create a site design using this site script as one of the IDs we just created as a site script inside of it. We provision this, and we'll make sure we provision this on a theme site. So the we pass on here is currently, as far as I know, only limited to these two options. So once we've created our site design, we can see all the parameters. We can see that this is not a default site design. We can see here that I've misspelled the title, which we'll correct in a second. So yeah, you have all this a nicely typed object which you can use with your IntelliSense, for example, to check it out. So let's correct our title first to PnPjs. So if we now look at it, we'll see our title is updated. So it's just an example to show you how the update function works. Next, another function we can use is you can limit your site designs to only be visible or viewable to a certain group or users. And we have functions for this as well, so it's pretty easy to use. You can pass a group or an array of groups or users to limit your amount of users that can view the site design when creating them. So let's do that. And we'll see in our rights object, which contains our permissions, we can see that the administrator is the only one that currently can view to create these site designs. And we'll make sure we remove that. So if you want to remove all the rights, the easiest thing to do this is to basically fetch all the rights, which I've just done, and then map all the user principals to an array, and pass that again in a function to revoke these rights. And let's do that. we should see that our rights objects should have a length of 0, which means we don't have any explicit rights on our site designs. All right, so it was quite technical and boring. Let's try to apply our site design on a existing theme site. So I have one here created. If I go to the site contents, we'll see that we don't have a PnPjs library. If you remember, we had our site script, which is this, which is basically just very simple. So we create a list, and if we run this, and then we refresh our site, we should see a PnPjs list. So this is just a way to make it possible easily using the PnPjs library. If we continue, the next step we'll do, and this is an awesome tool I will show you right now, we'll try to update our site script. And the thing is, we'll use a little more complex definition or schema. And I did not come up with this. I just used this very awesome site, which I'll just show you very quickly. And it is designed or written by Mikko Punamaki, if I pronounce it correctly. Excuse me if I'm not. So basically what I just did, I went to samples and I picked one of these, and this is the one I chose. It's a very awesome tool. You can just do everything through a graphical user interface. So if you change something here, it will reflect on your schema. It's basically just a JSON string. So props up for this tool. I love it. So let's update our site script with this more advanced script. And we should note when I do this, it does not mean that our site will be updated. So the provisioning will not happen. We didn't trigger anything. We just updated the site script, which is linked to our site design, if that makes sense. So we need to provision our site design again. So let's do that. And basically what we did, if I can just, we created some site columns, we created a content type, we did not create a SharePoint list because the documents library already existed. So we added this content type to this document, which I'll just show you right now. If you go to the documents library, we'll see that we have these extra columns like project owner and delivery date. So we're sure we provisioned the correct site design. Now, that's about it for applying your site designs and your site scripts and managing them. There are some interesting things. For example, if you load all your site scripts, and obviously we only have one right now, you can see that our schema is not loaded, so it's a null. I'm not sure why this is, but it's just the way the API is designed. So to make sure you get your definition, you need to use this function, which will basically take the ID as an input of the site script and load the content. So if we do this, we'll see that our site script metadata has been filled up and that our content or schema is available. So this is just a side note for people who might be wondering why the content is not loading or the schema. And this is also documented on the official documentation site by Microsoft. Let's try one more thing, and I want to, the site design we just created, I want to make it the default one. So let's imagine your business decides eventually we want it to be a default site design when creating new theme sites. If I do this, and let that run for a second just to confirm it. All right. And then if I go back, if I try to create a new site, we'll see nothing here to select. So we have replaced our default template, our theme site template, with the one we just created. This is not visible to the end user, but if create is valid, we'll see that our provisioning will start. So usually with the default theme site template, you wouldn't get this. So we're now sure we've got everything set and that it works. So the nice thing about this is that you can actually see that the things that have been updated. And that's about it. If we call our site designs one last time, we'll see we have this nice site design with a specific ID. We can see it's the default one. Of course, you can only have one default site design. And we can see that it contains site script. Of course, you can add more site scripts to it, and they will run synchronously. So you have to, you can add more, but they'll run one after the other one, of course. And that's about it. And the idea behind the implementation of PnPjs was that I could build a SPFx web part, which will kind of serve as a user interface for maybe power users or admins to control this. So I have one right here. So it's still a work in progress, but this was my initial idea, and unfortunately, I was hoping to kind of get it finished for this presentation, but I didn't have enough time. So it's basically just fetches all the site designs, and you have your site scripts here. And yeah, there's not much functionality. You can edit it. If we name this to 2, it should refresh and update, but that's about it. You can click on this and receive the of the site script. Yeah, and that's my presentation. I hope you liked it. And if there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Really great stuff. Sadly, it never showed up on my screen, so I'm not sure how the recording will handle that, but it sounds really cool. And it was a great contribution to the library. Okay, Vasa's got it. I was going to say, it's going to be a second segment of just loading. So I think now we're ready to move over to Anoop. Thank you, Kemal, very much. That was a fantastic demo and a really great topic and a really great addition to the PnP JS library, so thank you for that. And Anoop, if you're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think I just need to present my screen. Yeah.
I'm not sure this time if I'll see it or not. And I'm clearly using Skype wrong. It wouldn't be a problem with Skype itself, of course.
You are using it wrong, absolutely. It's a hardware issue.
Typical.
Right. Can I please confirm?
Yes, we can see that. I can see that. So, Patrick, yeah. Probably not.
No, I can't, honestly. That's weird. Anyway, awesome. Take it away, Anoop.
Right. Hello, everyone. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. My name is Anoop, and I'm a SharePoint developer at Content and Code. You can follow me on Twitter at Anoop Tells, and then that's my LinkedIn if you want me to follow there as well. All right. So today I've been given an opportunity by Vesa and the PnP team to present two SPFx extensions. So yeah, that's makes me go in the history books of PnP, I think. Right. So the first one is the copy classic link extension. So what this extension does is when you select an item in a library, it just copies the classic link of the selected item. So it uses a library called as copy to clipboard, which just copies your link to the clipboard. And then the main reason behind developing this extension was sometimes you would need the classic link, say in a content editor web part, when you want to show an image, or maybe add a link to a document or things like that, or even in display templates when you want to display an image. Say you have a list wherein you have a link to an image and you want to display that using the display template, then you would need the classic link to be present in that list. So yeah, this was developed basically considering all the classic things in consideration. I'll do a quick demo of this one, and then I'll show you the code. So as you can see, we have a library here, and then got some items here. So if I just select this item, which is an image, and then I can see this extension come up over here, click on that, and then all it does is says link has been copied, and you can press Ctrl V to use that. So if I just quickly open up Notepad and then paste that, you can see we've got our classic link, so which means we can use this anywhere we want. Now on the code side of things, the code is pretty straightforward. All we are doing here is we are referencing this copy to clipboard library, and then once the command is clicked, once the document is selected, this command will be visible only when one document is selected. And then all we do is get the item name, the list name, and the full item URL, and then pass it to this copy method, which eventually copies it to the clipboard. And then after that, you can either, show this using something called a sweet alert, which is as the name says, makes the default alert sweet. Or the other thing is I've just added this another library called as show toaster, so you can either display it as a toast. For the sweet alert, again, the command is pretty straightforward. All you do is just pass the title and the text that you want to display, and the type, whether it's a success or failure, and things like that. And if you are using Toaster, I think there was a demo of Toaster by Chris Kent in one of the PnP calls, so that has a lot of details. But yeah, you can just do Toaster.success or failure and things like that. And the code for this extension has been uploaded in the PnP samples. I'll be pasting a link for that soon. And also just wanted to show that since this I've deployed this extension tenant-wide, so if you say want to edit the properties of the extension, you can come to this tenant-wide extensions list, which is in the app catalog side, and then you can basically edit the property of that copy classic link. And then at the moment I've set show toaster to no, but if I set that to yes, then instead of the sweet alert, you will see the toaster. Right. So that's one extension done, and the second extension is called Convert to PDF. So what this extension does is when you select single or multiple documents, you can convert that to PDF. So for that, we'll be basically using the Graph API in content or drive item/content endpoint. We need to pass the shared ID or the encoded sharing URL to that Graph API, which we will be constructing, and I'll show you how to do that. Once we pass that to the content API and specify the format, there are various formats that Graph API provides. One of them is PDF. Once you specify the format as PDF, you get the PDF stream. and then you can just get the document from that stream. And in this particular extension, I'm using Azure Function. There's no hard and fast rule to use Azure Function. I'm just using here because just wanted to show that we can call Azure Functions from SPFx extensions. If you want to do some complex tasks after getting the stream, then you can probably do those in the Azure Function. But whatever I've done in this extension can be done via the graph client as well. So, as in on the client side, no need to have the Azure Function. Now, just to do a quick demo of this one, let me kick off the Azure Function first. Basically, I'm running it locally. So, let me open the library. I've got a couple of documents here. One is a Word document and an Excel document. Nice names, isn't it? And then, so when I select those two documents and then click on Convert to PDF, and then it says actually converted to PDF. So press Convert, and then it kicks, sends a request to the Azure Function. Once Azure Function runs, converts the documents to PDF and uploads those PDF documents back to this library. And when I OK that, just the screen is refreshed, and you can see a Word document and an Excel document in PDF format. So just click on that Word document, and then says the right thing. PnP is awesome, and in PDF format. Right. So with respect to the code of this one, again, on the extension side, it's quite straightforward. All we are doing here is for all the selected items, we are getting the names of the items that are selected, and then pushing it into an array. And then after that, we pass it to a method called start conversion. That method essentially constructs the Azure Function URL. The Azure Function accepts some query string parameters like the site URL and the list name and all the names of the items. And then what we do is we again show a suite alert, which eventually uses fetch to call the Azure Function with that URL. And then if I go on to the Azure Function itself, let me just stop this. So once we are in the Azure Function, we get all the details from the extension, and then we loop through all the items. And then for each item, as I said, it needs a sharing ID or an encoded URL. To compute that, there's this formula. Basically, we get the base 64 string and then use this U exclamatory, and then some other bit of code which includes replacing and things like that. This was posted as an answer by Michael Swenson and Valim in one of the blogs. And I'll paste the link to that as well. And then once we have that encoded URL, we need to pass it to the graph client. So we need to get the graph client. Now there are various ways with which we can get graph client. Over here, I'm just using an application ID and an application secret to get the graph client. So again, this is from one of the repositories in the Microsoft Graph in GitHub under Microsoft Graph SDK. So wherein we get the client ID, client secret, and then the confidential client application. With that, we get a token with the with the scope as graph.microsoft.com/default. And once we have the token, we can use that to get the graph client. And then once we have the graph client, we call the shares drive item content endpoint, and then pass it some options. Those options include the format as PDF. Now, there are a lot of formats available. I'll post a link to that as well. But in this case, we are using PDF. So we'll get the PDF stream from the Graph client. And then after that, you can use again the Graph client to upload the document library, to upload the documents back to SharePoint. But I'm using, PnP here. There's one extension method called as root folder.upload file. And then with one line, you can just upload the document back to the document library. So yeah, that's it from the code side. And so the code for this, as I said, is available in the PnP repository. I've also written blog posts for these two. I'll be adding links for that as well. And yeah, that's it from my side. So I'd like to say happy PnP Thanksgiving.
Go PnP.
Yeah. All
right. Thank you very much. I will assume that demo also looked great because I still couldn't see it on my screen. Not sure what's going on there, but thank you very much. Very cool demo. Fantastic stuff. And I think you got a few questions there in the IM window if you have a chance to get those answered. And we should be back on the slides, theoretically. I see them, but I'm sharing them, so I don't know if things are working or not. Maybe somebody can confirm. David can see them. Great. Awesome. So not really much time for Q&A. I think we've had a great discussion, as always, over there in the IM window, so thanks, everybody, for that. Our next meeting will be December 6th for the SPFx JS SIG call. December 6th, can't believe we're already into December. Our next general dev meeting will be next Thursday, November 29th. So look forward to seeing everybody on those calls. And with that, I'll say thank you all for joining. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving, and I will talk to everybody Monday. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And recording will be out in 24 hours. Bye-bye. Happy Thanksgiving.